This 1976 sci-fi cop comedy about a detective paired with a robot partner was such a legendary disaster, it ranked number 33 on TV Guide's Worst Shows Ever. But behind its spectacular failure lies a treasure trove of bizarre production secrets, celebrity cameos, eccentric stars, and the shadow of a comedy legend. Plus, it triggered a lawsuit-worthy copycat show. Fact 1. Get Smart's robot was Yoyo's blueprint. If Holmes and Yoyo felt oddly familiar to television audiences in 1976, there was a very good reason for that. Executive producer Leonard Stern had previously created and produced the wildly successful spy comedy Get Smart, which ran from 1965 to 1970 and became a cultural phenomenon. One of Get Smart's most beloved recurring characters was Jaime, a highly advanced robot agent who worked alongside the show's bumbling hero, Maxwell Smart. Jaime was played by actor Dick Gautier and appeared in multiple episodes throughout the series, always getting laughs from his literal interpretation of commands and his struggle to understand human behavior and emotions. When Stern developed Holmes and Yoyo a decade later, he essentially took the Jaime character concept and expanded it into an entire series premise, swapping out the spy agency setting for a police precinct. The DNA of Get Smart was all over Holmes and Yoyo, from the robot partner's naive personality to the fish-out-of-water comedy that came from mixing advanced technology with everyday police work. Critics and viewers at the time noticed the similarities immediately, with many pointing out that what worked as an occasional comedic device in Get Smart became repetitive and exhausting when stretched across 13 full episodes as the main premise. The problem was that Jaime worked best in small doses as a supporting character who could pop in for specific episodes, whereas Yoyo was front and center in every single scene, which meant the same gags had to be repeated over and over again. What had been a fresh and funny idea in Get Smart quickly wore out its welcome when it became the entire foundation of a new show. Fact 2. Jay Leno's forgotten TV debut. Long before Jay Leno became one of the most recognizable faces in late-night television as the host of The Tonight Show, he made one of his earliest television appearances in the most unlikely of places, the Holmes and Yoyo pilot episode. In September of 1976, when the show first aired, Leno was still a struggling stand-up comedian trying to make a name for himself in Los Angeles. He had been performing at comedy clubs and working small acting gigs wherever he could find them, and the Holmes and Yoyo pilot offered him a tiny, uncredited role as a gas station attendant. The part was so minor that Leno doesn't even appear in the main cast credits, and his scene likely lasted only a few seconds of screen time. This was during the period when Leno was taking any work he could get, appearing in various television shows in small roles, including an episode of Good Times that same year. The Holmes and Yoyo appearance came a full 6 months before Leno would make his first appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in March of 1977, which would ultimately launch his career into the stratosphere. By the time Leno became a household name decades later, this brief gas station attendant role in one of television's most notorious flops had been largely forgotten by everyone, including possibly Leno himself. It's a fascinating reminder that even the biggest stars often have humble beginnings in forgettable projects, and that success in Hollywood frequently requires paying your dues in shows that history would rather forget. Fact 3. Gomez Addams directed multiple episodes. Behind the camera on several episodes of Holmes and Yoyo was none other than John Astin, the legendary actor best known for his iconic portrayal of Gomez Addams on The Addams Family from 1964 to 1966. While Astin had become a beloved television star for his manic, scene-stealing performance as the enthusiastic patriarch of television's most famous macabre family, he had also been building a career as a television director throughout the 1970s. Astin directed a total of 4 episodes during Holmes and Yoyo's single-season run, bringing his unique comedic sensibilities and understanding of physical comedy to the struggling sitcom. His experience with the broad, cartoonish humor of The Addams Family might have seemed like a perfect fit for a show about a bumbling detective and his robot partner. But even Astin's directorial skills couldn't save the show from its fundamental problems with writing and concept. Interestingly, this wasn't Astin's first time working with producer Leonard Stern. as Stern had also been the creator and executive producer of Macmillan and Wife, another show where Astin had worked. Astin's involvement with Holmes and Yoyo represents just one chapter in his long and varied career in television, which included not just acting and directing, but also a 1968 short film called Prelude that earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Live Action Short Film. Despite his best efforts behind the camera, Holmes and Yoyo remained a creative misfire, but Astin's direction of those episodes stands as an interesting footnote in the career of one of television's most beloved character actors. Fact 4. The star who lived in the 1940s. Richard B. Shull, who played the perpetually unlucky detective Alexander Holmes, was one of the most eccentric actors in Hollywood, and his personal life was even stranger than the robot cop show he starred in. According to John Schuck, who played Yoyo and worked closely with Shull throughout the show's production, Shull was obsessed with the 1940s and lived his entire life as though that decade had never ended. Shull didn't just appreciate vintage style or collect antiques as a hobby. He completely immersed himself in the era by exclusively purchasing and wearing 1940s clothing in his daily life. He refused to use modern writing implements and insisted on only using pen and ink for all his correspondence and written work. Perhaps most remarkably, Shull owned his own private railroad car, which he would actually attach to commercial trains, allowing him to travel around the country in vintage style like a throwback to an earlier era of American transportation. He drove a 1949 Chevrolet as his regular vehicle, refusing to upgrade to anything more modern. In a 2012 interview, Schuck remembered his former co-star as a very funny actor and a unique man, emphasizing that Shull truly lived in the past rather than just romanticizing it. This wasn't a performance or an affectation for publicity. It was genuinely how Shull lived every single day of his life. Shull's dedication to living in a bygone era made him a fascinating figure in Hollywood, a character actor whose off-screen personality was far more interesting and memorable than the struggling sitcom that briefly made him a lead. Fact 5. Yoyo's computer panel was hilariously low-tech. One of the most memorable and frequently mocked aspects of Holmes and Yoyo was the supposed high-tech computer panel built into Yoyo's chest, which could be opened by pulling his tie. The show made a big deal out of this feature, regularly showing characters opening Yoyo's chest compartment to reveal his complex robotic innards and make repairs or adjustments to his systems. However, anyone who looked closely at what was actually visible when Yoyo's chest opened could see that the advanced police technology was laughably low-budget and unconvincing. The prop consisted of what appeared to be a basic handheld calculator, a standard cassette tape, some radio knobs that looked like they came from an old stereo, and an assortment of random colored lights that blinked on and off, all of it assembled inside what looked remarkably similar to a 1970s-era household fuse box. There was no attempt to make it look futuristic or advanced. It was clearly just random electronic components thrown together by a prop department working on a tight budget. Critics and viewers at the time compared the show's approach to technology to the films of Ed Wood, the infamous B-movie director known for his visible strings, cardboard sets, and complete disregard for believable special effects. The cheapness of Yoyo's internal components became emblematic of everything wrong with the show's production values, representing how Holmes and Yoyo tried to sell itself as a science fiction comedy, but couldn't even be bothered to make the robot look remotely convincing. Decades later, the hilariously unconvincing computer panel remains one of the most enduring images from the show. Fact 6. The show was mocked. On Maud, Holmes and Yoyo became such a high-profile failure so quickly that other television shows were mocking it while it was still on the air. One of the most memorable jabs came from Maud, the popular sitcom starring B. Arthur that ran on CBS from 1972 to 1978. In one episode of Maud, a character who was a game show host, played by actor Conrad Janis, made a self-deprecating joke about his career by complaining that he had barely missed getting the lead role in Holmes and Yoyo. The joke was clearly intended to suggest that landing a role on Holmes and Yoyo would have been a career disaster, the kind of project that an actor would be embarrassed to have on their resume. The fact that Maude felt comfortable making this reference demonstrated just how quickly Holmes and Yoyo had become synonymous with television failure in the industry. The show's title had become catchy and memorable enough that audiences would immediately understand the reference and get the joke, even if they had never actually watched an episode. This kind of pop culture mockery was particularly brutal because it came while Holmes and Yoyo was still producing new episodes and trying to find an audience. The reference on Maude highlighted an interesting phenomenon where Holmes and Yoyo's distinctive name and premise made it more famous as a punchline and symbol of bad television than it ever was as an actual show that people watched and enjoyed. Even fellow television producers and writers were essentially giving up on the show and treating it as a cautionary tale. Fact 7. The 427-pound robot, who weighed 220. One of the most obvious problems with Holmes and Yoyo was a visual inconsistency that viewers couldn't help but notice every single time Yoyo appeared on screen. According to the show's opening narration, which played at the beginning of every episode to explain the premise, Yoyo was supposed to weigh 427 pounds because he was constructed from heavy police-grade materials and advanced computer components. The show made frequent references to Yoyo's massive weight, with jokes about him breaking chairs, crashing through floors, and being impossible to lift or move. However, actor John Schuck, who played Yoyo, was clearly a normal-sized man who appeared to weigh somewhere around 220 pounds. At most, there was no attempt to use special effect, camera tricks, or padding to make Schuck appear heavier or more imposing. Critics at the time pointed out this glaring inconsistency, with one writer particularly noting that Schuck looked more like 220 pounds of donut-eating actor than the 427 pounds of police department relay circuits and body armor that the show kept insisting he was supposed to be. The disconnect between what the script claimed about Yoyo's weight and what viewers could see with their own eyes created a constant reminder of the show's low budget and lack of attention to detail. Every time Yoyo walked upstairs without them creaking, sat in a regular chair without incident, or moved normally, instead of with the heavy, ponderous movements that a 427-pound being would require, the illusion broke down completely. Fact 8. Cancelled after 11 episodes but 13. Aired. The cancellation story of Holmes and Yoyo is a perfect example of how networks handle shows they've given up on but still have contractual obligations to complete. ABC initially ordered 13 episodes of Holmes and Yoyo for the 1976 to 1977 television season, and the show premiered in its regular Saturday night time slot on September 25, 1976. Despite the network's initial hopes and promotional push, the show struggled immediately with both critics and audiences. The reviews were brutal, ratings were poor, and it became clear very quickly that Holmes and Yoyo wasn't going to be the hit ABC had hoped for. By December of 1976, after only 11 episodes had aired, ABC pulled the plug and officially canceled the series, removing it from the schedule and replacing it with other programming. However, the network had already paid for and completed production on 13 total episodes, which meant there were 2 finished episodes sitting on a shelf with nowhere to go. Rather than just shelving those episodes permanently, ABC decided to burn them off during the summer of 1977, a common practice where networks air leftover episodes of canceled shows during the low viewership summer months when fewer people are watching television. Those final 2 episodes aired in August of 1977, nearly 8 months after the show had been canceled, giving Holmes and Yoyo the dubious distinction of having its failure spread across 2 different calendar years. Fact 9. ABC immediately tried the same concept again. In one of the most baffling decisions in television history, ABC responded to the spectacular failure of Holmes and Yoyo by immediately greenlighting another show with almost exactly the same premise. Future Cop premiered as a television movie in May of 1976, several months before Holmes and Yoyo debuted, and then became a short-lived series in March of 1977 while Holmes and Yoyo was still technically on the air. Future Cop starred veteran actor Ernest Borgnine as Joe Cleaver, a veteran street cop who gets partnered with a rookie officer named Haven, played by Michael Shannon, who turns out to be an android designed as the perfect police officer. The similarities to Holmes and Yo-Yo were immediately obvious to everyone. Both shows featured a human cop discovering his new partner is a robot, both dealt with keeping the robot's identity secret, and both tried to mine comedy from the robot's lack of understanding about human behavior and emotions. The main difference was that Future Cop tried to play the concept more seriously as an action drama rather than a straight comedy, but that didn't help it find an audience any more than Holmes and Yo-Yo had. Future Cop lasted only 5 episodes before ABC canceled it, and the show's failure was compounded by a 4-year plagiarism lawsuit filed by science fiction authors Harlan Ellison and Ben Bova. The two writers claimed Future Cop had stolen their concept from a teleplay they had written called Brillo, and they ultimately won the case, receiving a substantial financial settlement. Fact 10. The Bunko Squad malfunction gag. Among the many recurring jokes and malfunctions that defined Yo-Yo's character throughout Holmes and Yo-Yo's brief run, one gag became particularly memorable to the few viewers who actually watched the show regularly. Whenever Yo-Yo's internal circuits would short out or malfunction, which happened frequently throughout most episodes, he would get stuck repeating the phrase, "The Bunko Squad, the Bunko Squad," over and over again in an endless loop, unable to stop himself. The repetition was meant to sound like a vinyl record that was skipping, with Yo-Yo essentially becoming a broken robot stuck on the same phrase no matter what anyone said to him or what questions they asked. The only way to break him out of this verbal loop was for his partner, Detective Holmes, to physically slap him on the head, which would somehow reset his circuits and allow him to stop repeating the phrase. The joke played on the common experience people had in the 1970s with actual records that would skip and repeat the same section of a song endlessly until someone bumped the record player. The Bunko Squad reference was meant to be funny because asking someone about their previous assignment was a normal getting-to-know-you question that cops might ask each other. But for Yo-Yo, it would trigger this malfunction. The gag appeared in multiple episodes and became one of the show's signature moments, with fans who remember the show often citing it as one of the few genuinely funny recurring bits. Fact 11. Garage doors made Yo-Yo cartwheel. One of the most visually absurd and frequently repeated malfunctions in Holmes and Yo-Yo involved electric garage doors, which somehow had the power to completely disrupt Yo-Yo's systems in the most ridiculous way possible. Whenever Yo-Yo was near an automatic garage door that was opening or closing, the electromagnetic signals from the door's motor would cause him to uncontrollably spin head over heels in midair, cartwheeling repeatedly like a gymnast until the garage door finished its cycle. This wasn't a subtle glitch or minor inconvenience. Yo-Yo would literally flip through the air in complete somersaults while people around him watched in confusion or tried to help him. The show used this gag multiple times throughout its run, treating it as one of Yo-Yo's most prominent design flaws, despite the fact that it made absolutely no logical sense, even within the show's own established rules about how the robot functioned. Critics at the time singled out this particular malfunction as especially ridiculous and emblematic of the show's desperate attempt to generate physical comedy through increasingly absurd means. One reviewer specifically recalled how, in the first episode, someone pressing a remote garage door opener caused Yo-Yo to spin head to toe in midair, creating an image that was more bewildering than funny. The garage door gag became one of the signature visual moments that people remembered about Holmes and Yo-Yo, representing the show's commitment to broad slapstick comedy that seemed more appropriate for a Saturday morning cartoon than a primetime sitcom aimed at general audiences. Fact 12. John Schuck argued about the premise. John Schuck, the actor who played the robot Yo-Yo throughout all 13 episodes of the show, later revealed that he had serious creative disagreements with the show's creators about one of the most fundamental aspects of the premise. Schuck believed strongly that Detective Holmes should never discover that Yo-Yo was a robot, and that the secret should be maintained throughout the entire series. From Schuck's perspective as a performer with experience in comedy, keeping Holmes in the dark about his partner's true nature would have created endless opportunities for conflict, misunderstandings, and comedic situations, as Holmes tried to make sense of Yo-Yo's increasingly bizarre behavior without knowing the real explanation. However, the show's creators and writers disagreed with this approach, and they made the decision to have Holmes discover the truth about Yoyo at the very end of the pilot episode, meaning that the secret was revealed before the series even properly began. In interviews years later, Schuck expressed frustration about this choice, saying that he felt the show lost lots of chances for conflict and comedy by giving away the robot secret so early. Once Holmes knew that Yoyo was a robot, many of the potential misunderstandings and confusions that could have driven storylines simply evaporated, leaving the show with less material to work with. Schuck's concerns proved somewhat prophetic, as Holmes and Yoyo struggled throughout its run to find fresh comedic situations and often fell back on repetitive malfunctions and physical gags. Fact 13. Gilmore Girls made it immortal. While Holmes and Yoyo disappeared from television screens after 1977 and faded into obscurity for most viewers, the show achieved an unexpected form of cult immortality decades later, thanks to one of the most beloved series of the 2000s. In the Gilmore Girls episode Application Anxiety, which aired in October of 2002, mother and daughter duo Lorelai and Rory Gilmore are having one of their trademark rapid-fire conversations filled with pop culture references when Lorelai makes a joke about terrible television shows. She sarcastically suggests that the Brady Bunch Hour is on Rory's list of the 50 best shows, right after Holmes and Yoyo and Hee Haw Honeys, naming 3 shows that were notorious failures and widely considered among the worst programs in television history. This brief reference in a single line of dialogue introduced Holmes and Yoyo to an entirely new generation of viewers who had never heard of the show, many of whom then went searching online to find out what this mysterious robot cop comedy was and why it was being used as a punchline. The Gilmore Girls reference came at the perfect time, right as YouTube and internet video were making it possible for people to actually find and watch clips from obscure shows from decades past. Suddenly, Holmes and Yoyo had a new life as a curiosity that people sought out specifically because of its reputation as one of television's biggest disasters, cementing its place in pop culture as a legendary flop. Fact 14. Richard B. Shull was a Sherlock Holmes scholar. In an almost too perfect piece of cosmic irony, Richard B. Shull, the actor who played Detective Alexander Holmes on Holmes and Yoyo, was an actual serious scholar of Sherlock Holmes literature in his personal life. Shull was an invested member of the Baker Street Irregulars, which is one of the oldest and most prestigious literary societies in the world, dedicated to the study and appreciation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories. Founded in 1934, the Baker Street Irregulars is not a casual fan club, but rather a serious scholarly organization that publishes academic papers, hosts conferences, and invests members with special titles based on references from the Holmes stories. In 1986, 10 years after Holmes and Yoyo ended, Shull received his official investiture into the society with the title, An Actor and a Rare One, which was taken from a line in one of the original Sherlock Holmes stories. The irony of a genuine Sherlock Holmes scholar and devotee spending his career playing a bumbling detective on one of television's worst shows apparently wasn't lost on anyone involved. Shull's membership in the Baker Street Irregulars showed that he was a man of serious intellectual interests and literary passion, making it all the more unfortunate that his most prominent starring role was in a show that became a punchline and embarrassment rather than a showcase for his talents as a character actor. Fact 15. The show spawned a plagiarism lawsuit. The legacy of Holmes and Yoyo extends beyond just being remembered as a terrible show, because it indirectly led to one of the most significant plagiarism cases in television history. Future Cop, the similar robot cop show that ABC launched during the same period as Holmes and Yoyo, became the target of a lawsuit filed by 2 prominent science fiction authors, Harlan Ellison and Ben Bova. Ellison and Bova claimed that Future Cop had been directly plagiarized from a teleplay they had written called Brillo, which featured a very similar concept of a police robot partner. According to the authors, they had pitched their Brillo concept to ABC television, where it was rejected, but then an executive who had seen their pitch moved to Paramount Television and helped develop Future Cop, which bore striking similarities to their original idea. The lawsuit dragged on for 4 years from the time Future Cop first aired in 1976 until 1980, when a jury finally heard the case and deliberated for only 4 weeks before deciding in favor of Ellison and Bova. The two authors were awarded $182,500 in compensatory damages and an additional $154,500 in punitive damages, for a total of $337,000. The case became an important precedent for writers trying to protect their intellectual property in Hollywood and proved that the robot cop concept had far-reaching consequences that extended well beyond the failures of Holmes and Yoyo itself.